So up next is our expert speaker series. We have some amazing speakers who are going to be touching on various topics related to DEIA, and we're really excited to have them here today to present. So to start it off will be Marci Gray from Gray Matter Health. She is the CEO of Gray Matter Health, a counseling and consulting firm specializing in therapy and diversity-focused psychological health. With over 20 years in social services, Marci is also an author and mental health advocate. She created the Empowerment Planner, a system for improving mindset and fostering resilience. As a speaker, trainer, and consultant, she educates diverse audiences, including executives and nonprofits. Marci's clinical work and PhD studies focus on anti-racism and mental health, and she regularly provides expert advice on media outlets like Cityline, Breakfast Television, and CTV News. Let's welcome Marci to the stage.
All right, it's still morning. Good morning. Good morning. I love to have people speak back to me when I'm sharing. So welcome and good morning. All right, let's begin. So what if I was giving away $1 million today? How many would love to get $1 million? Awesome. Awesome. So you can say then that you could use $1 million? Maybe for like a boat or a home or going on vacation or whatever you'd love to use it for. You could use $1 million, could you? Yes. Awesome. So could I. So could I. So could I. But if I said to you, the catch was, if I give you that $1 million, you only have one day and then poof, you're gone from this earth. Would you still want the $1 million? No. Most of you said no. No. Most of us would not, because what? It's not money that's most important, it's time. It's time that's more important than anything else in this world. And quality time. We want time to be able to spend with our loved ones, time to have fun and engage and do things that we want to do. Time is one of the most important things, and quality time is one of the most important things. We know that we hear this all the time is money, but I want to move away from time is money today, and I want to move into time being opportunity. Opportunity where we can connect, where we can have fun. We spend so much of our working day with the people that we work with. Our awake time is a lot of the time at work. And so do we think about how we connect with others and the opportunity to have fun, to engage, to enjoy work? I'm not going to ask you how many people enjoy their work or enjoy their coworkers, but I want you to just think about that for a moment. Because we spend so much time with our coworkers, shouldn't it be that we enjoy what we do and enjoy the work that we do with them? And I know from statistics that not all of us do enjoy the work that we do. So what we want to have in our environments are psychologically healthy workplaces where we can enjoy the things that we do and the people that we engage with. So protecting our mental health in the workplace is protecting our psychological health in the workplace. And psychological safety is really broadly defined as this climate in which we feel comfortable to express our ideas, we feel valued for who we are. We're in the workplace and we feel like we matter and we're valuable. In the absence of psychological health and safety, what happens? This is what we had as a word cloud in one of my sessions. People feel anxious and sad and fearful and insecure and apprehensive and unsafe and uncertain. So that's not the type of environment that we want to have, but that's the type of work environment that many are going through and living in. So let's have Andre. I met an actual Andre today, and we were chuckling at my table about how my example is one of the folks that we're going to be talking about today. But Andre, so Andre's a really happy guy, starts working with you, starts to enjoy the job. But then, soon enough, stress and anxiety start setting in because he doesn't start to feel valued. He's not listened to when he speaks. He's ignored or he's feared in the workplace. There is a decrease then in his ideas and his innovation because he doesn't feel valued. And then he starts to feel isolated and discouraged because of the lack of psychological safety. And now let's go with Leanne. Leanne, as well, has started in your workplace with you, is working alongside you, and then realizes that there's a lot of conflict in the workplace, and then feels that there's a lot of miscommunication that starts to happen. So what happens with Leanne? Leanne starts to go for longer smoke breaks, and she starts to hang out outside, and she starts to call in sick a lot more often, and she's no longer present in the workplace. And before you know it, she resigns, and you've got a workplace with high turnover rates. Now here's Jag. Jag, again, is a friendly guy, loves to work, loves to be with you in your workplace. However, he has low employee satisfaction and motivation because, again, there's no psychological safety in the workplace where he's at. And so he now is present, but he's not really present. So presenteeism is you're physically there, but you're not really there. So instead of doing work on your laptop, he's scrolling and on the internet and checking out ChatGPT, like we talked about in the last session. And soft quitting, he's not actually doing any of the extra. He's doing the bare minimum to get by. And all of this is having a negative impact on his mental health and wellness. And so do we want to have this as the scenario in our workplace? Of course not. We don't want to have our employees or our coworkers feeling this negativity in the workplace. But we, again, know from statistics that there are many people who are feeling like they don't have this psychological health in the workplace. And so what happens is people start to become guarded. So either they're quiet or reserved, they feel isolated, they feel they're defensive or insecure or dishonest, or even become deceitful when there's no psychological health and safety. Because what does that do to our systems? It really emphasizes and ignites our sympathetic nervous system, which is our flight, and freeze system within our bodies. And when that happens, it creates this system of distrust. So in terms of the neuroscience within our brains are feeling fear, suspicion, and defensiveness when we're not having that psychologically safe space. Our brains are feeling activated in terms of our amygdala, our emotion center, and looking for signs of danger within the workplace. Our prefrontal cortex is less activated, and so therefore, in terms of decision-making and innovation, we are no longer working at optimum in that parts of our brain. On the other hand, if there's an environment of trust and psychological safety, our brains are going to work optimally. Our neocortex and limbic system are both going to be operating well and helping us to make great decisions, become innovative, creative, and really work well within our workplaces. So what we really want is to feel appreciated, valued, cared for, connected, feel that sense of belonging and empathy. And all of us have that opportunity to either have that happen in our workplace or make that happen in our workplace. We want to have that feeling of our whole selves and our whole belonging, feeling comfortable sharing, appreciated, feeling welcome, respected, feeling that freedom to take risks and be supported. And this is what it looks like to have psychological health and safety in the workplace. So our workplace obligation is actually to promote psychological well-being and to prevent harm. However, what we also know is that there is a lot of psychological harm that happens within the workplace. And so what I like to talk to you more about, if I had more time, was how we can prevent harm in the workplace. And so I'd love to connect with you after to talk more about the different types of threats that are present within the workplace, the different types of threats that are impacting and inhibiting folks from having great psychological health in the workplace. And if you are a racialized person, there are a whole lot of other sets of threats to psychological health that will impact you in the workplace. And so what I would like to work with organizations to do is to establish psychological health and safety for all. Whether you're racialized or non-racialized, being able to understand why there are differences and why the needs might be different, and how to attend to those needs within the workplace. So I've created a framework called Elevates that has 8 components to be able to work alongside our psychological health and safety in 13 factors within Ontario, within Canada, about psychological health and safety. So this Elevates framework helps to work towards helping you to have psychological health for everyone in your workplace. So let's remember that time is not just money, but time is opportunity. Opportunity to make connections, opportunity to make sure your connections count, opportunity to hopefully have fun, enjoyment, engagement, happiness within your workplace. Thank you. All right, I had a time frame and I did it within my time frame. So they gave me a minute for questions. Are there any thoughts, comments, or questions?
Is there any statistical information available? What percentage of turnover is because of psychological behavioral patterns?
There are. Do I have them right now? No, but there are, yes. Absolutely. So with psychological health, a lot of research is showing that a great number of turnover rates is linked to psychological health. So because a lot of people quit when they don't like their jobs, right? And when you don't like your job, there is an impact on psychological health. I don't have the number for you, but it's a
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
So while we understand and appreciate and see the importance of psychological impact, there's a large population that continues to stay with the organization as well.
Yes.
What's the study done to understand their psychology and why they stay with that?
Yeah.
Why can we not replicate that?
Yeah, and so they stay, but there's presenteeism or there's soft quitting, right? So they're there present. A lot of the times it's because they need a paycheck, right? They need to work. They don't have other opportunities, or there's other things like the golden handcuffs. So there's certain jobs that they feel like are golden and they need to keep. But there's a lot of reasons why people stay. But the fact is, when they stay, they're not innovative, they're not doing the best that they can, and they're not as productive. So psychological health and safety impacts productivity in a huge, huge way. Yes. Yes, and so what I do is I take a look at that with you, and then we work on why it's not working and how it can be changed. So a lot of this is even looking at the process of change management within your organization and how do you make big changes within your organization, right? And it's not going to be by just a quick program or a quick email blast or any kinds of things like that, or team meetings. It really is going to start with the top vision of the organization and move throughout the organization. And it needs to be something that we want to make a big, slow process towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Marci, for your presentation. Is there a difference between wellness in the workplace and psychological health and safety in the workplace? I normally hear the term just wellness, or is this just something that's underneath, or there are major differences between both?
Well, a lot of people use those words interchangeably, but wellness talks about your full health, right? So your physical health, your mental health. A lot of the times your psychological health and safety is talking about your psychological health, but when we look at the 13 main factors, it also looks at your physical health. So some people use those terms interchangeably. Some people use those catchphrases within their organization, just the umbrella term wellness. But psychological health sometimes falls under that huge umbrella term of wellness. Yeah. I took more than one, sorry. I'd love to connect with you afterwards and have a good rest of your day.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Marci. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker, which is Matthew Lorentz. Matthew Lorentz is an outreach coordinator for Come to Work, CNIB. He's deeply passionate about motivating the participants that he works with. He enjoys engaging in conversations with like-minded employees who aim to enhance inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility in the workforce. As a partially sighted professional, Matthew brings a unique perspective to identifying and facilitating discussions that help ease the process of breaking down workplace barriers. At Come to Work, he collaborates with both the talent pool and the employer partners to create synergies that benefit from the organization's mission and services. So Matthew, I'll come and guide you up to the front.
All right, hello everyone. So I'm, like Jennifer mentioned, I'm partially sighted myself. Normally I would have a white identification cane on me to let everyone else know so that I don't have to go through the process of saying, well, you're looking me right in the eye though. All this to say, sight loss is a spectrum, and that's why Come to Work was established back in 2018. So if we could just go to... Oh, I get it? Oh, I didn't even see it. So how does this work? Sorry, I... This? Okay, so...
I work the camera, so...
Okay, well, while we're waiting, I'm just going to be introducing us anyway. So, for those of you who don't know who CNIB is, honestly, as a person with sight loss myself, it would be indispensable. It has been indispensable throughout my life, and even before I started working with them. They've been around since 1918, and the reason for that date specifically is actually, as a history major myself, is very specific. So, two things happened in 1918. There was the Halifax explosion in Halifax, and people were coming back from World War I with sight loss. And did we have sight loss and looking around and saying, how do I navigate the world now that I have sight loss? And CNIB took it upon themselves to create this foundation and say, fine, we'll show you how. And that's what they've done. And I've always called CNIB innovators from the very beginning because of that. And you'll notice there's a 100-gap timeline between that and when Come to Work was created. Come to Work, about 100 years later, in 2018, was created by one volunteer who took it upon himself to pitch a proposal and change what the concept of what sight loss in the workplace looks like. And that's basically what this presentation today is going to cover. But essentially, Come to Work is designed to help employers and, as Jennifer so nicely pointed out, talent pool connect with one another without actually being a placement organization. Okay. So in this first slide, this one? All right, perfect. In this first slide, I, as a person with sight loss, was even flabbergasted by the statistic there that even today, and now these were taken in 2017, so hopefully this has improved since then, but 1 in 3 people don't know how to engage with a person with sight loss, never mind in the workplace, and how to interact with them. So that is part of what we do at Come to Work. We teach our talent pool how to be engaging and how to be professional, but we also teach our partners, which I'll get to in a bit, on how to moderate their interactions with the sight loss community. I think that's all we really need from this one. Okay, didn't work. I hit down. Oh, okay, perfect. So this next slide is about the challenges of sight loss versus the facts of sight loss. And the challenges of sight loss it's a variety of different things, from, as mentioned many times at this podium, stigma, and what does sight loss look like in the workplace? The gentleman talking about the trade school, that is actually something that Come to Work is actively trying to get into. How does someone with sight loss, which is a spectrum again, how do they get into the trades? How do they get into different sectors? So our talent pool span many different sectors, from finance to IT to everything. But the important fact from that slide was the 1 in 3 people. If we could just, thank you. So this slide is called blindness etiquette. And the reason for this slide is because the reason for that statistic in the 1 in 3 people is that how do you interact with someone with sight loss? If I were to ask you that question, well, most people wouldn't assume the first column in our slide here. It would just be natural. Most people with sight loss, depending on when they've lost their sight, interact the same way that anyone else would. Come up, say, you can use phrases like, I'll see you later. I'm not going to take offense to that. We can connect in gatherings like this. And then the next one over is, but anyway, it's part of sight loss etiquette. We're basically trying to educate the educators, in a sense, and employers on just how to interact with people with sight loss, because, like I said, I'm partially sighted. That goes from I'm kind of in the middle where I can still see all of you wonderful people today, and some people can't tell that I have sight loss. That poses a separate problem. That's why I usually have the white cane. Some people are completely blind. They'll have a guide dog. Don't pet the guide dog if they have a harness on them. I'm sure many of you know that already. But essentially, that guide dog is acting as their eyes. And that it will distract the guide dog no matter how much training it has gone through. And it can be very dangerous for the sight loss community. Okay, so the next one is for around recruiting. So basically, when hiring someone with the sight loss community, we always use an expression at Come to Work called ask, don't assume. If you don't know how to engage with someone who has sight loss, then ask them what their preference is. And that goes with the application process, that goes with the interview process, a simple email before an in-person interview, for example. Do you need a sighted guide? Which, if any of us connect later, I can share some more information on what that is. Do you need me to meet you out front to bring you to a specific room, as Jennifer so wonderfully demonstrated by helping me up here today? But asking those questions and having them at the forefront of your interview and application process really does make it easier for all of us to navigate what is a normal experience. And we just have a slightly different normal, which we need some devices to assist us with. Okay. So I put this slide next on purpose because of the venue. The most important thing I'm going to take from this slide is that 70% of people polled in 2017, again, this is older statistics, I'm hoping Come to Work has helped since then, but 70% of people polled having two equal qualified candidates would choose the person with sight. And it is 3 times harder for a person with sight loss to find employment than it is for someone with sight. So that statistic is very important, and I wanted to mention that before moving on. There's not, like the rest of that we can talk about later on in one-to-one conversations, but that was another statistic that even today in 2024, I thought that number would be a lot lower, and that's part of my role as to try and make that number lower. Okay, so next slide. Did you already move? Okay, perfect. So this one is talking about basically, I'm sorry, I don't see the title. Oh, right. Okay. So I mentioned assistive technology earlier. So what that means is there are programs, some of you may have heard the name JAWS, might not have heard the name NVDA. The good news is that while working with Talent Pool, some of these programs can be pricey for employers. So what I tell Talent Pool, especially who are partially sighted like myself, is to test out the built-in magnification system that comes with Windows. Because ZoomText has, I don't know, $2,500 price tag or something like that. If I can work with my talent pool and say, are you comfortable using the Windows magnification? Well, most of you are probably going to have Windows computers. So that's something I do with the talent pool. On the other side of that, when I talk to the partner employers, there is a duty to accommodate within reason, but what we want to get to is past duty and more to, we want to create these inclusive spaces in order to enrich our workplaces, in order to find diverse talent pool for all of you, and in order to really move that needle forward as to what the workplace looks like. Again, no pun intended. All right, and this is our mentorship, I believe. So we have basically my role is I'm looking to get the talent pool that I work with jobs with hopefully some of your companies. If not, then we can have further discussions when I send out some further informations. The other thing we work with is partnership development, which is talking in forums like this today, getting the word out, what is Come to Work, and showcasing that people with sight loss focus on their abilities rather than the disability and or sight loss in the workplace. And the reason I bring these two up now is because the third pillar of our program is our mentorship program. If we can't connect with you on trying to get one of the people in the sight loss community hired at your organization, we do host 3 virtual networking events a year, as well as an in-person gala we just had on November 1st. That might be something you're interested in. That's how we connect our talent pool and our partner employers, is by hosting these events. And then the third way is, this is the one place that Come to Work actually matches the partner's experience with the talent pool's skill set. And we have a third-party app that we use called Mentor City that matches the two together so that everyone can have further conversations. And we have a director of mentorship that can help with that if anyone's interested. I believe that these are some of our venture pool that I don't believe I mentioned earlier, but the venture pool is a way for entrepreneurs with sight loss to interact with the workplace if they can't find a regular role, so to speak. And that is about it for me. Okay. I guess no time for questions? I tried.
Make sure you connect with Matthew once we're done all the speakers.
Thanks, Matthew. I'm pleased to present our next speaker, Cindy Elaine Butler. It's Cindy's understanding that their professional purpose must be to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be successful, regardless of barriers, that they must, as a professional, remove these barriers. Cindy conducts training and consulting for other companies on how to be more accessible and inclusive from a human approach, and how to recruit and retain more diverse individuals through the lens of intersectionality and human resources, as well as other areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion in an authentic manner at the company they founded called Accessible Creates, due to understanding the barriers that exist within the workplace for diverse individuals. Please help me welcome Cindy Elaine Butler.
Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today to talk about accessibility in action at work. So, like my lovely introducer said, I am Cindy Elaine Butler, and I'm the founder of Accessible Creates, and I also have and live with multiple disabilities. And so actually 25% of people with disabilities are in the workplace but do not disclose they have disabilities. And so I just wanted to start with that interesting statistic. Nope. What's happening? There we go. Got a little preview there. So first, I'm going to go over an agenda. I know I don't have much time, but agenda is critical for when you're doing presentations or when you're providing documents to individuals, for anyone, but especially for people with disabilities, because it gives us, expectations of what to expect. Also for people with invisible disabilities, such as neurodivergent conditions. And so today we're going to be talking about test your prior knowledge. So getting you thinking, have you thought of these things before? What have you thought of? What is accessibility? What is accessibility at work? Some tips and tricks. Then also assessing your understanding now and about Accessible Creates. So, have you heard the term accessibility before? Do you say disabled or disability instead of differently able or special needs? Have you heard of the term neurodiversity? And when you think of accessibility, especially in the context of the workplace, do you think of medical and of doctor's notes? So what is accessibility? Accessibility is the practice of making information, activities, environments more sensible, meaningful, and usable for as many people as possible. However, it is associated with disability and people with disabilities. But true accessibility includes everyone, and because we all have a relation to disability and we all play a part in accessibility. So on this slide, I have some pictures. And so you can see multiple examples of symbols of accessibility and what it looks like. And so on the left side, I have numerous different accessibility symbols, which include sign language, Braille, use of service animals and service dogs, use of assistive technology, what that looks like, hearing aids, having a ramp. And in the middle of the screen, there's the wheelchair symbol that is most commonly used when it comes to accessibility and disability in general. But then on the other side, I have a person that is not in a wheelchair and that's standing up. And this is important because that's now becoming actually the model and look at for what we're looking at when it comes to accessibility, because more and more being aware that invisible disabilities do exist and you can't tell, oh, is it someone has a disability just by looking at them? And so what does it actually mean in the context of not just at work, but in the world? And then I also have the rainbow infinity sign, which is actually the symbol for neurodiversity. And so really, again, what do those look like in the workplace and understanding the symbols that might exist when you see and understanding accessibility. So what is accessibility at work? So having a plan to make workplaces more accessible, it's all about recruiting, but also retaining people with disabilities. There's so much push right now on recruiting individuals with disabilities, which is incredible. I have a background in human resources, but also that retention piece that I think Marci talked about, when the high turnover piece. So how are you actually retaining people with disabilities in your organizations? Are they feeling supported? Are they feeling they can be promoted and have different positions and different opportunities in your organizations? And what does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? Accommodating employees. This includes both reasonable accommodation and medical accommodation. I could talk about accommodation for hours, but I only have 8 minutes. But briefly, reasonable accommodation is on the flip side of medical accommodation. So again, like I said in my first slide, talking about the doctor's notes and what does that look like? That's more the medical side of things, getting that formal accommodation and that support, but reasonable or just little things you can do every day. For example, just changing a job task so someone can be able to do the job more efficiently and, being able to be flexible and be able to modify quickly and to be able to adapt accordingly. And then it starts with AODA. We're in Ontario, Brampton, Ontario. And so, but it's also beyond just that legislation, or there's other legislation across the world, because I'm lucky enough to work with companies all across the world, really understanding that legislation and accessibility legislation is the bare minimum. It's just getting us starting on this journey to make sure our workplaces and the world around us are more accessible, but it just starts there. It doesn't end there. And so there's a lot of barriers that come with accessibility in the workplace. And these include physical or architectural barriers, informational or communicational barriers, technological barriers, organizational barriers, and attitudinal barriers. So as you can see, there's a lot of barriers on this list. And I want to highlight that attitudinal barriers are actually one of the most prevalent barriers in the organization when it comes to accessibility and for people with disabilities. This is because there's you challenge your previous bias. People have a perception of what they think a disability looks like. There's also mental health disabilities that, again, you can't see by just looking at someone. And so really challenging your own biases and your perceptions of what that looks like is so vital and critical for accessibility at work. There's the physical barriers, which include, most common example is the ramps, also having accessible washrooms, information or communicational barriers. So what does that look like when you're actually communicating with someone? Are you communicating how they best need to process the information and best communicate with you? The technological barriers, so you having that technological infrastructure. I think Matthew mentioned it in his presentation, but understanding like you do have screen readers available for your, employees that might have a vision loss and what that looks like. Organizational barriers, so that's like policies and procedures, and that's actually a huge barrier in the workplace as well. Again, having from a human resources background, understanding that policies are a critical blueprint for an organization, and so really understanding that policies and auditing your policies on a regular basis, having your staff included in these conversations. Do they feel like it's accessible? Do they feel like it's being meaningful to them? So then on this slide, I have some pictures to go along with those barriers I said in the previous slide. So on the top left, you can see a woman that uses a wheelchair and there's stairs. And so that's a barrier because she can't get into the building. And then I have a video chat between two people, and there's no closed captions enabled. And so closed captions, most commonly people think of, people that are hard of hearing or have that are deaf, but also it can help anyone. And so enabling closed captions in your meetings is a good way to reduce that barrier. And then that policies, again, the regular occurrence of auditing your policies, having a third party come in to evaluate those policies, making sure they are compliant, but also going beyond that to do best practices and fully be accessible, not only in the content, but also in the how they're actually visually having different methods and modes of the policy itself. So having, parts of the policy be a diagram, and then having the diagram have an alt text, which is a description of that image, and that's critical. And then on the last picture I have, so what's the matter with you, dear? And then the person using the wheelchair says, apart from your attitude and these barriers you mean? And so like I said, attitudinal barriers are a huge barrier. So it starts with you doing that reflection work and really understanding, what do you think of when you think of disability? Do you have a preconceived notion of what a disability looks like? And so I just needed some assistance up because my legs are in a flare-up. So I have a disability that sometimes impacts my legs. And so just getting that support, what does that look like? So now I'm going to give you some quick tips and tricks. It's not... it doesn't go way into detail. Again, I'm mindful of time, but understand that accessibility impacts everyone. When you truly understand that accessibility impacts everyone, because first off, anyone can become disabled at any time, but also understanding how it impacts how you show up to work and how it impacts your day-to-day as well. Understand your role in your organization and what your role is in actually supporting and being an ally for accessibility in the workplace and creating more accessible workplaces. Having training sessions internally at your organization. So having that awareness piece, bringing in people that are specialists in this area to talk about their experiences, because it allows for people in your organization to understand that, our company actually does care and care about accessibility and cares about me as an individual. Because like I said, 25% of people in the workplace disclose they have a disability. And so when you start having these conversations more in your organization, that number will only increase, hopefully. Having external support on your accessibility journey. You can't do everything alone. There's a lot of work to be done in this area. So having that external support, having collaboration with other companies as well that might be in your industry, or, again, those subject matter experts to really aid you in your accessibility journey, because we're all at a different place in our accessibility journey. So whether you're in the beginning or in the middle or near the end, the end is never. It's a continuous journey. And so really having that support along the way, and then evaluating your culture towards accessibility, disability, and neurodiversity. Do you talk about these things in your organization? Are you aware of these things? Are your hiring policies and hiring practices, accessible to everyone that needs that accommodation? Or just, what does that actually look like in your organization? Asking your employees how they feel about it, or having an external survey, depending on what your culture is like. And then understanding, again, those barriers I mentioned is so critical for really understanding what accessibility looks like in your organization, because you could be good at not having some barriers but have more barriers and have more problems with different barriers. So really understanding where your barriers lie in your organization. You could have a good attitude towards people with disabilities, but then the physical barriers could be an impact. And so what does that actually look like? And then be willing to educate yourself on a daily basis. You're doing a great step by being here today and listening to my presentation, listening to presentations such as Matthew's presentation as well, but continuously being willing to educate yourself and to continue learning and being able to be open to different people's lived experiences and the intersectionality piece. Learn to be an ally for the disabled and neurodivergent communities. This work is tiring and there's a lot of work to be done, and it depends on people that have that lived experience, but also our allies that lift us up and help encourage us to disclose when we have a disability or ask for that support when we need it. And then again, really challenge your biases towards people with disabilities and that are neurodivergent. Again, for example, I was doing a presentation and I disclosed to the attendees that I'm autistic, and they're like, "Oh, you don't look like my 6-year-old nephew." I'm like, "I'm a 27-year-old non-binary person that's biracial. I'm not gonna have the same lived experience as your nephew. I apologize." So now I want you to quickly internally reflect on your understanding now. Again, there was brief snapshot. There's a lot more work for you to do when it comes to accessibility, but I hope this helps you on your journey along the way. And so do you understand the basis for accessibility? Do you understand some tips and tricks that you can start implementing not only in your workplace, but in your everyday lives? Do you know some types of barriers, and do you know some clear examples of those barriers and how they show up in the world and in the workplace? So a bit about my company. So my company is called Accessible Creates. It was founded in August of 2021. And at a high level, we provide HR, accessibility, and neurodiversity training and consulting and coaching. And so going into organizations to provide consulting on the policies, to provide training sessions and information sessions on what accessibility actually looks like in your organization. And we recently added coaching as well, because a lot of people kept asking, "Can you add this service?" And I was like, "Okay, I can do that. I'm not tired." And so for both job seekers, so helping job seekers when they're looking for employment, having that, that lived experience, and also having that human resources background, as well as when I'm actually going to companies and organizations, being that third party that can, when performance management comes up or performance management reviews come up, really understanding that plays a critical role, because I think sometimes, for example, with mental health, someone could be in a depressive episode, and what the employer sees is, oh, they're being lazy, or they're not performing as well, but meanwhile, they're struggling with depression. And so really, what does that look like to help the employee before it becomes a huger problem and a bigger problem that needs more intervention? And so the goal is to create more access for everyone in the workplace to feel like they're included, like they can do their best work, and really show up and be the most authentic self at work. And so then I have my links to my social media and my websites. So you can find me at accessiblecreates.ca. If you want my website, there's a contact form there. You can also message me on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And then I have my company logo on the side, which probably has a rainbow infinity sign. And so again, that's a symbol for neurodiversity. And it also has accessibility symbols because Very Accessible Creates. And so that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney, and I encourage everybody, in the same way that you'll be speaking with Matthew, make sure that during lunch you speak with Sydney as well about how you can get involved with their work. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming our last expert for this morning's segment, and I've quite enjoyed this new thing that we're doing at the Board of Trade. Given that it's the last item before lunch, I would be remiss if I didn't remind all of you to remember to scan the QR code and contribute to our Business Confidence Index. Of course, the real prize is fostering a better future for our city. But in the event that isn't enough, we are giving away $100 at lunch. So Prize right here. I am really excited to be welcoming to the stage Colin Druhan. Colin is the Executive Director of Pride at Work Canada, a national nonprofit that drives positive employment outcomes for 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals. He has been at the helm of the organization since 2014, steering it through significant growth. A champion for community-led initiatives, he currently serves on the board of directors of the Stephen Lewis Foundation, which funds grassroots efforts to fight HIV and AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. Formerly the president of Volunteer Toronto, Canada's largest volunteer centre, Colin is committed to public service. In 2020, he was named a Diversity Fellow by Civic Action, a recognition that underscores his dedication to inclusive civic engagement. So it's my pleasure to welcome Colin to the stage.
Thanks very much. And so a couple of things that weren't in my bio that we got to clear up. First of all, I got a haircut from that picture that you saw earlier. Another thing is that I'm a blue noser. Who knows what a blue noser is? Come on. No, somebody from Nova Scotia. Come on. Okay, so we're learning something every day. So I'm from Nova Scotia, a very proud blue noser. My parents live right near where the Blue Nose 2 is docked. If you want to know what that looks like, just look on the back of the dime. The other thing that you have to know about me that's important is that I'm super, super gay. I'm super gay, and I've been super gay since I was 13 years old, growing up in Nova Scotia. And when you grow up being the butt of every joke, you have to learn to laugh at yourself first. It's really how you create a sense of comfort with who you are when you're different from the people that you're talking to. So I learned from a very young age that whether it was at school or at Easter Mass or at a family gathering or at the curling club, I had to crack a joke and I had to make everybody smile because I had to make everybody comfortable with how I was different from them. And I had to help them understand that they could understand me, that they could connect with me in some way. So moving this sense of humor, this way to move through these environments, it only helps so much, right? When people limit your potential. I was working at Burger King. That was one of my first jobs. They wouldn't let me work with customers because they said I was too gay. Couldn't be the captain of the curling team because nobody would listen to me because I'm gay. Couldn't be on the basketball team because they make the other players uncomfortable because I'm gay. I said, Jesus Christ, what the fuck can I do? So I decided to throw myself into working with the community that I came from. And that's really what I've done for the past 20 years. I started off doing street outreach with people who were, homeless, with no job, not having any connection to their family. I worked with newcomers that were here escaping persecution from whatever country they were born in, that they loved, that they didn't want to leave, but they had to leave for their own safety. All the way up to working in counseling programs for people living with HIV, figuring out how they're going to pay for their medication and pay for their groceries. And today, it's such a pleasure. I get to work with queer and trans organizations all over the world, in Argentina and Venezuela and Ghana, in Kenya, Uganda, Bangladesh, and places all over Canada as well. As was mentioned, it's my pleasure and honor to serve on the board of the Stephen Lewis Foundation with Stephen, who's Canada's former ambassador to the United Nations, and he was the special advisor to Kofi Annan on HIV and AIDS in Africa. And the research that I'm here to talk to you about today, Lead with Pride, I was very proud to present that to the Senate of Canada just a few weeks ago at the invitation of Senator René Cormier, who until recently was the only gay man in the Senate until Senator Chris Wells was appointed just a few weeks ago. So leaning into my strength from the community, leaning into who I was, and really sloughing off those who said that I couldn't do things because of who I am, that's really been the key to my personal success. And it's really important for all of you to recognize that your workforces already include people just like me, just like Jose from my team, just like folks from Pride at Work Canada's team, who have that same potential, but it's not being recognized. And it doesn't mean it's not being recognized by you. It could be that it's not being recognized by them. And that's where you come in as an employer. So our first speaker, expert speaker, which is me being an expert, whatever. Our first speaker, who was an expert, talked about psychological safety, about that idea of being able to take risks at work. Coming out is a risk anywhere for a lot of people. Our friend from CNIB can tell you about the power of building networks, about how sometimes people just need to be exposed to folks that they don't have currently have a relationship with to understand what their potential is. And our previous speaker talked about the power of just providing even the most basic accommodations and getting to know somebody and their needs and how their needs align with your business's needs. So, this is really not specific to the community I'm talking about, queer and trans folks, but when we think about the community that we do serve, it includes all of those folks, people with disabilities, it includes newcomers, it includes people who are racialized, it includes people of all genders. So when you're thinking about, what your workforce strategy is, you have to understand that none of these things that we're talking about today that you all came here to learn about, none of them happen by accident. You have to have a strategy. So I'm here to tell you that if your workforce strategy includes newcomers, Canada is a magnet for people from all over the world who are escaping persecution. They want to come to Canada so they can enjoy our human rights protections and they can have flourishing careers. So if you have a newcomer strategy and it does not include queer and trans newcomers, you're leaving money on the table. I also think about the huge labor shortage that we see in skilled trades. I'm from a skilled trades family. My dad's got 3 tickets, and he taught at the Nova Scotia Community College for 35 years. And we just see dwindling and dwindling numbers in some of the really important trades that we need to unlock Canada's potential around EV batteries, manufacturing, energy generation. These are jobs that can be filled by people from our communities, but they don't currently feel safe. I spent a lot of time over the last couple of months in Alberta working with electrical workers who have to go to work early because people keep screwing with their equipment so that they'll electrocute themselves when they start work because they're trans. They come to work early to clean out their helmets because they're filled with urine at the beginning of the day. These are people who face unconscionable conditions, but they show up for work every day and they do an amazing job. So that's the kind of potential that you can unlock with a very simple strategy about creating safe, psychologically safe, physically safe workplaces for people from our communities. So what I like to talk about is our Lead with Pride report. I don't want to distract from my movie star good looks, so I don't have a lot of slides, but I really hope that you can download our Lead with Pride report. Is an incredible piece of research that our team carried out, where we talked to about 35 different people who had reached levels of senior leadership as out queer people, trans people, two-spirit, bisexual, lots and lots of different identities. The thing that I thought was so cool about this research was that our team overrepresented newcomers. So about 50% of the people that we talked to in the report were born from outside of Canada and talked very specifically about their experiences as queer and trans people who are newcomers to Canada acclimating to the job market. We also overrepresented Black people who are queer and trans because a lot of the research that focuses on 2S LGBTQIA+ communities really just focuses on white people who are gay and lesbian. And to that end, we also overrepresented people who are bisexual, who actually make up the largest portion of our community, but are often overlooked when it comes to advocacy. So, the thing that I like to point about our Lead with Pride report, if you don't take anything else away from it, it's that the 35 people that we interviewed, of those 35 people, not a single one of them said that they grew up with a mentor or somebody to guide them through their career. And when we asked those same 35 people if they were a mentor, they said, the day I knew that I could become a mentor, I became one. That's the power of our community. People of all genders who defy the odds, look at their experience and say, never again. And, a lot of people think that coming up on stage and telling everybody that I'm gay, people think coming out is about disclosing something about yourself. But it's not about telling people that you're gay. It's telling people that you know who you are and that you're never going to apologize for it. And that's what Lead with Pride is about. So I really encourage you to download our report and see how we can work together, how you can all work together here in Brampton and with the Brampton Board of Trade and amazing allies like Jay Paul and the team to really build a community where people don't need to be afraid to go to work, they don't need to be afraid to come out, and they don't need to be afraid to lead with pride. So thanks very much for having me today.